Most plants go through a period of dormancy. They might lose their leaves, or they might look brown, and they might look dead, and in some cases they might actually be dead. But more often than not, they're probably just dormant.
If it's a tree or plant that you know usually loses its leaves, you probably won't worry about it. But if it's a new tree or plant for you, it might cause a bit of concern and you might think your plant is dying or dead. And unfortunately, dormancy can look like a dead plant at first glance. And if you ever go to a nursery around the winter or early spring, you might see what are called bare root trees or bare root plants. And they look dead, but they're not. They're just dormant and should leaf out once the weather warms up. Think of it like bears hibernating for the winter, except some trees or plants will lose their leaves and rest for the winter to gear up for flower or fruit production in the spring, summer, or fall. And when your plants are dormant, it's a great time to prune them without damaging them. And it's also cheaper and easier for companies to send plants in their dormant state. One year while I was on vacation, my dad took care of my garden. I came back to a lot of plants chopped and mowed down because he thought he was doing me a favor by cleaning my garden up. And even though my dad is a great gardener, he doesn't know a lot about certain plants. And he thought some plants were dead and they weren't. So yeah, that was pretty upsetting. So now he knows not to take those liberties and to just water my plants and do nothing else. And I cannot tell you how many times I've thought I had a dead plant only to find some new growth on it several months later. It happened to me so much that I created what I called Dead Plant Alley, where I placed plants that I thought were dead in a corner to see if they'd come back. And while not all of them came back, some actually did. Because of this, I've started to note the growing habits and schedule of all of my plants. And now even when I see a plant that looks dead, if it's a perennial and not an annual plant, I leave it because it's probably just dormant. I have a lot of plants in my garden that looked brown and possibly dead, but you can see that they are starting to put out new growth, so they're definitely on their way back. This is why it's really important to research the plants that you have, whether you put them in the garden yourself or if they were already there when you moved in, and see if they are the kind of plant that are supposed to lose all of their leaves, or if they are supposed to be evergreen, or if they're an annual or a perennial. And many plants, even if they were cut down and you thought were dead, can actually start to sprout back up from the roots that are left in the ground, like artichoke and rhubarb. If you can't identify an existing plant, most phones can identify them by just taking a picture. And if you don't have that feature on your phone, there are many plant ID apps that can help. They aren't always the most accurate, but you can also post your pictures to gardening discussion boards on places like Facebook or Reddit, and someone, somewhere, should have an answer for you. Another easy way to check if your plant is dead or not is to do the scratch test, where you find a stem or branch and you lightly scratch it. If it's green underneath, it's still alive, but if it's brown, it's most likely dead. So again, do your research on your plants. Write down in a plant journal their growing habits so you can know or remember what to expect of each plant. And when in doubt, if the plant isn't one that comes back from the roots, do the scratch test and check for signs of life.